it's Alexa and I'm here today to share my May wrap-up. Even though I was away for the first week of the month, and even though this month has been kind of busy for me, I still managed to read a pretty good amount of books and I'm excited to talk about most of them today. So without further ado, let's get started. The very first book that I read in May is going to come as a surprise to no one whatsoever who reads my blog or follows me on Twitter or who even watches my YouTube channel, and that book was A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. This is the second book in her A Court of Thorns and Roses series, and it follows Farah, her main character, after the events of the first book, basically. And in this book, Farah has to deal with a lot of things. She has to deal with her PTSD after what she went through in the first book. She also has to deal with the shifting relationships she's having with certain characters in the book. And honestly, that is my favorite part of the entire book, just seeing what happens to Farah and how she grows and changes and makes choices for herself. I think that was very strong. I also really like that the world grew in this one and that we get to meet new characters as well. And I really enjoyed it. I know not everyone loves the way that the story is told in this series, but I personally am so in love with it, and I'm so excited for the third book to come out next year. Why does it have to be next year? That's so far away. Anyway, if you have yet to check out the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, you should definitely do that, and if you have yet to read A Court of Mist and Fury, you should also definitely do that. I give this book a 5 out of 5 stars. The second book that I read in May is also one that I really enjoyed, and that book was The Only Thing Worse Than Me Is You by Lily Anderson. I am really excited about this book. It's a YA contemporary retelling of Much Ado About Nothing, and if there is one thing that I am very proud to say, it's that I enjoy Shakespeare and his work a lot, so it was really fun to read this one. And while at the beginning I wasn't sure how I was going to wind up feeling about this book, I ended up really enjoying it. It's the story of a girl named Trixie, and she is one of those really smart kids, and she goes to a special school for smart kids, so all of her friends are extra smart, everyone at that school is really smart, and her only goal for her senior year is to beat out her longtime rival Ben and be third in the academic ranking, because the first 2 spots belong to her best friend and the guy that her best friend has a crush on. Said best friend actually ends up dating said guy, and so Trixie actually finds herself in a situation where she's forced to be friendly with Ben, and they actually develop a real friendship. I loved it. I thought it was so cute. I thought that the characters were very fun, they were very unique, and I loved it. I loved all the nerdy references as well. I also thought that it was great that it was not just about romance, but I like how this one also had friendship. There was even a little bit of mystery thrown in there, and that was really fun. So this was very entertaining. It kept me really distracted when I was on a plane, and I believe I gave this one a 4.25 out of 5 stars. The third thing that I read this month is actually a novella, and it is called Father Mine, and it's by J.R. Ward. It is a novella that is set in the world of her Black Dagger Brotherhood series, and it focuses on Zadist, one of the brothers, and his sort of coming to terms with being a father. And what I liked about this is it gave me a chance to spend time with these characters that I love so much, because I love the Brotherhood like they're my own family. And I really liked seeing Zadist come to terms with having a daughter and how he feels about that and how he feels about his history impacting that. So it was just a really cute novella, and I really enjoyed it, and I gave that one a 4.25 out of 5 stars. The next book I read is actually a finale in a series, and that is Warrior Witch by Daniel L. Jensen. This is the third book in the Malediction trilogy, and I have to say I really thought that it was a satisfying conclusion to the series. Definitely have had to read the first 2 books in the series if you want to read this last one, but it is so good. We kind of see the main characters, Cecile and Tristan, and see how they try to stay one step ahead of their enemies, beat them at their own game, and triumph in the end. And whether they do or not, well, you're just gonna have to find out by reading this book. I can't really give a proper synopsis because it would be spoiling the first 2 books, but I will say that I was very satisfied by how it ended, especially because it managed to surprise me, and that rarely happens with books, I find. So yeah, I gave that one a 4 out of 5 stars. The next 2 books I read were part of the same series, and those books were Leveling the Field by Megan Erickson and Tied to Trouble by Megan Erickson. I just switched them around. Should have been Tied to Trouble first. Tied to Trouble is the only romance in that series, and I thought it was super cute. Like, it was just the right amount of fluff and angst, and I really like that a lot. It's basically about a guy named Owen who is pretty straight-laced. He's kind of a nerd, and he's kind of like really proper and everything. and his life is turned topsy-turvy when he meets the brother of his boss slash friend, and the guy's name is Chad, and he's the complete opposite. He's a firecracker, he's kind of spontaneous, he's very forward, and it's just fun to see the two of them kind of clash and then have sparks fly. Maybe there were like sparks of irritation at first, but they slowly but surely turned into sparks of like a romantic kind of, in the romantic kind of sense, and I absolutely adored it. I thought it was so cute, even though I did find that the plot was particularly angsty in a way. Like, it wasn't super angst, but it was angsty enough, and normally that's not my thing. I still really enjoyed it, and I thought it was really cute. And I gave that book a 4 out of 5 stars. And the other book in that series, Leveling the Field, I also really enjoyed it. It is about another of the siblings related to the first 2 books. His name is Ethan, and he's kind of still dealing with the guilt and grief he feels at playing a part in his sister's death. And he meets this firecracker of a girl. I forget her name. Oh goodness, why do I forget her name? Anyway, he meets this girl, and the girl is a photographer, and she has this project she's doing in honor of her deceased sister, and she is taking photographs of people with scars and telling their stories, and I thought that was really cute. They kind of meet, and the same thing happens. There's sparks, and he kind of is unable to resist her, or resist his attraction to her, which terrifies him but also challenges him to be better. And while I do think that this one kind of played out a little too conveniently, I still thought it was very cute, and I gave that one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Then I went back to fantasy and I read This Savage Song by Victoria Schwab, and I thought that was so creative. Victoria basically created a world where a city called Verity is split into 2. There is one side where you pay for protection from the monsters, and there is this other side where you are basically brought up to fight them. And both sides have ruling families, and this story is about the kids of the ruling families. There's Kate, whose dad is the one in charge of the side where you pay for protection, and she basically will do everything she can to prove that she is worthy of her father's regard. And then on the other hand, there is August, who is the son of the family on the other side, and he wants to be involved with like all of the things, but his family is trying to keep him safe because there are reasons. Anyway, these two have their paths crossed when August actually ends up at Kate's school, and they sort of get to know each other a little bit, but what really draws them together is an assassination attempt. And after that, they are on the run together and trying to unravel the entire conspiracy of what's really going on with the monsters in Verity. And I really like that this book has the theme of what really makes you a monster. That was such an interesting exploration to me. And I also just really enjoyed the story. It moved at a pretty fast clip, and there were like revelations that ensued like one after the other, which I thought was cool. I will say that it does take a while for you to get the hang of what's going on in the world, and that you actually have to actively work towards understanding it, but that didn't really deter me from enjoying it, and I have to say I really liked it. So I gave that one a 4 out of 5 stars. I read Stay Until We Break by Mercy Brown, and that is the second book in her Hub City series. Stay Until We Break is about the bass guitarist Cole in the band in the book, and it's basically about him and the romance that he strikes up with the band manager Sonia. And since they're on like a tour together, like the band and Sonia, because she's their manager, they kind of have like this book kind of has a road trip aspect to it. It also has the band aspect to it, and it also just has 2 individuals who are trying to make the best of situations that they're not necessarily content with. And I actually really like this one more than the first one. I don't know if maybe it was just because I was in the right mood for it, or maybe because I just enjoyed the conflicts more, like the individual ones. I wasn't so fond of the romantic conflict because I'm like, you guys just need to get your shit together. Anyway, I ended up really enjoying this one, and I think it's one of those NA romantics that's pretty fun to read. Like, it's quick, it's fun, it's really enjoyable in a sense, and I gave that one a 3.75 out of 5 stars. I read a arc of a book that I was pretty excited to check out, and that was Summer of Supernovas by Darcy Woods. And this is basically about a girl named Wilhelmina who pretty much makes all her life decisions based on the star chart that her mother left her. She really believes in like the zodiac signs and all of that stuff. And this is especially true when she's thinking about her love life. And so she's determined to spend this these few months of summer trying to find her one true love. And she meets a boy who fits the profile perfectly because he has exactly the signs that she needs. But she also finds herself attracted to this boy's older brother. And yes, sounds very love triangle-y, so it kind of is, it really is. But I think it's actually one of the most well-handled love triangles. I thought this was really cute. It read like a romantic comedy, and I liked the little Suni bits that were inserted. I also really like that it's not just about the romance. There's also Will's relationship with her grandmother and with her best friend, Irita. And I just thought it was very cute. And plus, I just really thought the guy in this book was really cute. There's one particular guy I loved in this book, and I'm pretty sure like he's gonna be most people's favorite. So yeah, it was definitely a really, really cute read. I gave this one a 3.75 out of 5 stars. The next 2 books I read were NA books again, and they were Right of First Refusal and Out on Good Behavior by Dahlia Adler. And those are books 2 and 3 in her Radley University series. I really enjoyed both of those books. I just thought they were such fun NA, and I really think Dahlia has a knack for writing new adult novels. Right of First Refusal is about Kate, and she is kind of determined to follow her path, which is to be a lacrosse star, a lacrosse athlete, because she's very passionate about her sport. And she kind of finds herself at a place where she has to deal with other things going on, like her dad getting remarried, and her ex suddenly appears back in her life, but as the current boyfriend of her new roommate, and that makes things really complicated. This one was a mix of like Kate dealing with her family issues with her father, and also dealing with her romantic issues with her ex, for whom she has unresolved feelings. And it was such a complicated mix, but I think it was handled really well, and I was just really finding this story riveting from start to finish, and I enjoyed it a lot. I gave that one a 3.75 out of 5 stars. And then we have Out on Good Behavior, which is about Frankie and the first time she falls in love with someone, and that someone happens to be Samara, who is Kate's latest roommate. Anyway, I thought this book was so cute. I just found it so adorable, and unlike the others, there's not really much of a family aspect to it. The friends are actually present more than the family, which is totally fine by me because I love Frankie's friend group. But yeah, I thought it was just so freaking cute, just watching Frankie fall in love and watching her sort of try to come to terms with how to be in a relationship with Sam, because she's never been in one before. And it was just so fun, and there were like lots of moments that made me laugh out loud, and I just really enjoyed it, and I gave that one a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was a complete change of pace, and that was Ivory Bone by Julie Eschba. This book is a prehistoric fantasy, and it's about a boy named Cole. He's basically being groomed to be the next leader of his clan, but his life as a teenager changes forever when one summer brings a girl named Maya and her siblings to their clan's home, and he sort of finds himself intrigued by her, but she's not so. She's very stubborn and very hard-headed about certain things, and yeah, so their clans have a history. But then, aside from Maya, he also meets this other girl named Lo and her clan, and he finds himself intrigued by her as well. And there's this whole like clan rivalry thing going on, there's this whole survival thing going on, and I thought it was so interesting. I really didn't know what to expect going into this one, and it surprised me, but in a really good way. It's a very uniquely told book, and I like that a lot. I also really liked how much detail Eschba put into telling us what this setting is like, what these people were like, and that was so cool. I also like that it's a new setting for a story that will be familiar to a lot of people. It's just a teenage boy trying to deal with all the things that life has thrown at him, whether it comes to his own individual situation or whether it comes to the relationships he forms with new people, and that was really great. So I give this one a 4 out of 5 stars. And then I read a fantasy trilogy, which was actually our series for the Flights of Fantasy book club, and I read the Lotus War trilogy by J. Kristoff. Those books are Stormdancer, Kinslayer, and Endsinger. What I really liked about this series is that the main character has a relationship with an Arashatora, a thunder tiger, and that relationship was the thing that carried me from book 1 all the way to the end. There's such utter devotion between Yukiko, that's the girl, and Baru, that's her Arashatora, and it's just so wonderful to watch. And Baru in particular is wonderful because he's so sarcastic, he's so, like, he has such a simple, straightforward way of thinking about things, but you can see how he changes as he develops his relationship with Yukiko, and it's amazing. But what I think is really interesting about the series is how Kristoff really manages to make this world so big, so large, and so many things are going on in it, and it's terrifying and there are horrible things that happen, but it's also fascinating and it's also really well done. And I like the twists and turns that this story really took me on. I like being able to read them like consecutively because the story is much better and much more fresh in my mind that way, and I thought it was such a well-written story. Like, he really managed to weave all these multiple storylines going on with all these different characters in different places really, really well. And I liked that there was just a good amount of romance and a good amount of court intrigue and a good amount of magic. It was so fascinating, and I really enjoyed that series, and I'm glad we finally read it. I gave Stormdancer a 3.75, I gave Kinslayer a 4, and I gave Enzinger a 4 as well out of 5 stars. I decided to go the complete opposite route and read a YA contemporary novel, and I read Defending Taylor by Miranda Keenely. And it's a little different from her other stuff, but I thought it was still interesting. What I particularly liked about it was that it's about a girl who is simply trying to make sense of her world. She's trying to figure out what she really wants to do for herself and to make her own way apart from what her family wants or what her friends say she should, or anything like that. And that part was really interesting to me. I also liked that she was such a relatable character because she worked so hard to achieve the thing she wanted, and she had she had a laser focus. I think the romance was really cute. I like that it was like a second chance romance, which was lovely, and the boy was really cute. However, I do feel like a few things in the novel were a little underdeveloped. Like, I feel like it could have been longer, and we could have spent more time with the main character Taylor and watch her go through things and have these things get resolved a little more with a little more time on the page, I think. But other than that, as usual, it was another YA contemporary that was enjoyable, and I also really like the cameos in that book, and yeah, so I would still recommend it as a Miranda Keenely novel, and I gave that one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was The Museum of Heartbreak by Meg Leader, and this book was pretty cute. I like the concept of it a lot. It's basically about a girl named Penelope, and she is telling the story of what happened to her in this one particular year of her life, and it involves all these artifacts from her Museum of Heartbreak. And it's so cute because each chapter starts with a different object, it starts with a different object, and she has them with the placards onto them, and you'll see why she does that in the end. But it was just so cute because you kind of get to see how she tells the story of what happened to her and her friends and her family and all of that in the span of a year. I believe it's a year. And I thought that was just such a cute concept. I do feel like it was kind of parts of it felt a little bit contrived, which I am personally not such a big fan of. I gave this book a 3 stars, but I had rounded it up because there were dinosaurs in this book, and I love dinosaurs. And then I read a book that surprised me by how much I enjoyed it, considering what it's about, and that book is Winning by Lara DeLoza. And this book is basically about a girl named Alexandra Miles who wants to be the homecoming queen, and that's her only goal in life. But when a new girl named Erin comes into her school and becomes a potential rival for the crown, she decides to take on a new project in the form of Ivy Proctor, another girl at their school, and she pushes hard for Ivy to become the homecoming queen. Only obviously it's not that simple because Alexandra wants the crown for herself. And what I liked about this one is it's very Mean Girl / Pretty Little Liars / Gossip Girl. It's just one of those books where you're you don't necessarily like any of these characters because they make such bad decisions. They're not always nice, and a part of me was horrified to find that I was fascinated by it, but then at the same time it's very voyeuristic. You're oh, these are what these people are like. I thought it was a fascinating take on this, and I actually really like how it ends as well because I felt like it was perfect for this book. So yeah, this book really surprised me, and even though half the time I was freaking out because I'm what the hell is she gonna do next? She can't be that mean, can she? Those were the thoughts running through my head reading this book. But overall, I ended up really enjoying it, surprisingly, and I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. And the very last book that I read in May is 100 Hours of Night by Anna Waltz. This is actually a book that was originally written in Dutch and translated into English. It is the story of a girl named Amelia DeWitt who runs away from the Netherlands and goes to New York City. Anyway, she finds herself in New York City and off on an adventure that she's always wanted to go on, only The time she gets there is also the same week that Hurricane Sandy happened. With her newfound friends, she is forced to face the consequences of that hurricane. What I really find fascinating about this is how the author portrayed Hurricane Sandy and what it was like experiencing it. I was here when Hurricane Sandy happened, but I lived up in the Bronx, so the effects weren't quite as terrible as they were in the city. But I did get to go and see the city for myself on the like a couple of days after when we went in to volunteer, and it was very eerie. I can totally picture what she described it as in the book, and I thought that was really good. I also really liked her main character. Like, she is not only dealing with like the panic that the hurricane has brought and like the stuff that forced her to leave the Netherlands, or like made her feel like she was forced to leave the Netherlands. She's also dealing with her own personal thing, and I think that's so relatable and so understandable. And then there are like the other characters in this book who become her friends, and like that kind of experience really does bond you for life. So I really enjoyed it. I know I'm making a mess of saying how I felt about it, but it's one of those books where I feel like you should experience. And yes, it's a little bit younger because the protagonist is a little younger, but that didn't stop me from really enjoying this one. I give it a 4.25 out of 5 stars. So there you have it, guys. Those were all the books that I read in May. If you've read any of them, I would love to hear your thoughts, and if you haven't, you could tell me which ones you are interested in reading, or why don't you tell me what's the best book you read this May? I would love to know. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. If you want to follow me on other social media, I'll have that down below. Also, I would love it if you liked this video and subscribe to my channel. Okay, I guess that's it for now. I'll see you guys soon. Bye!